Hello, my name's Gary Ford, Managing Director of Tiger Hobbies Limited, UK hobby importers and distributors, and welcome to part 6. On the 20th of December, Eisenhower passed control of all Allied forces to the north of this salient, this bulge where the battle gets its name from, to Field Marshall Montgomery. Now, this is no slight on the American commanders. Early on I said the American commanders may have been on leave, and elements of 1st and 9th Army fighting that area had had no communication with senior personnel, so Montgomery was in a better position to take control. The only problem with Montgomery, he just had to hold a conference and tell everybody how he came to the Americans' rescue. Now, this really acted off the Americans, and this went back up to Winston Churchill and the Chief of the Imperial General Staff, Alan Brooke, who told Montgomery, you know, basically keep your mouth shut. This is very sensitive. The Americans had a real hard time in this battle. Arguments still rage on today amongst historians about actual Monty's role in the Battle of Bulge. But post-war, Asso van Manteuffel, commander of the 5th Panzer Army, stated that his forces up north were having a harder time once Montgomery took control, as he turned a series of incoherent US actions into a coherent action, including, to placate the Americans, some of the British forces were placed under US Army control. We'll now turn our attention to the 5th Panzer Army, led by Asso van Manteuffel, one of the most capable German generals of the war. Now, his army is quite large, maybe not as well equipped as those 6th Army, Panzer Army above him, but somewhat better led, not having the ego of Sepp Dietrich or Piper. He'd also got slightly more open country, still, you know, wooded, but he could use his armour more effectively. The next major obstacle was the town of St. Vith, defended by a number of US armoured units and infantry units. Now, St. Vith should have been captured on the 17th of December, a day after the attack went on. But again, the US Army, now getting better organised, held the Germans, and the Germans didn't capture St. Vith until the 23rd of December. The Germans were now getting put back on their time schedule. If there's one element of this battle that the everyday person will know about, is the siege of Bastogne. Not a large town, but it lies at the centre of a series of roads and junctions that's going to be critical for the German advance to get to the River Meuse before they can get to Antwerp. Now, the Allies had sussed this out as well and started quickly moving reserves and reinforcements into this town. First to get there on the 18th of December were the 10th Armoured Division, and on the 19th by truck came Bastogne's most famous defenders, the 101st Airborne Screaming Eagles, made famous in the TV series The Band of Brothers. About 15 kilometres east of Bastogne, US Army units were fighting hard to slow down the advance of the Germans to give the time for the defenders to make their defences. Now, what was facing them was two respected armoured divisions coming against them. First, the 2nd Panzer Division of the German Army and the Panzer Division of the German Army and the 26th Volksgrenadier Division. Now, slowly but surely, the Germans pushed these defending allies back, and many of them fell back into Bastogne, and were now ready for the siege of Bastogne. On the 19th of December, Eisenhower had a meeting at Verdun before he gave command of the US forces north of the Bulge to Montgomery, and the Bastogne was at the centre of this meeting. He asked if anybody could do anything, and can a one person step forward, and that would be General George S. Patton, who earlier on during the supply crisis famously said, "My boys can eat their belts, but my tanks have got to have gas." This gives you a measure of the man. He turned around tonight and said, "God damn yes, my boys can do this. Are you sure, George?" Patton yes, he was a bit of an egocentrical man, but he was one of the great armoured commanders of the war. He'd already started asking his staff members to prep for this advance 100 miles north to Bastogne. And in fact, some of his lead units were already on the way, so he was fairly confident he could get to Bastogne in the time allotted. By the 21st of December, the Germans had completely surrounded Bastogne, but the defenders, the 10th Armoured, now 9th Armoured, and the 101st Airborne were fighting doggedly to stop the Germans getting to Bastogne. And on the 22nd, they kind of got a little bit of luck. The skies opened up, and the C-47s, which we British know as Dakotas to the Americans, the Skytrainer, the Goonie birds, started coming in, dropping in food and ammunition, and more importantly, a medical unit. As the 101st, as they just got into Bastogne, the Germans closed in behind them and captured their complete medical unit. So they needed new doctors and medical orderlies to help with the wounded. The Germans were literally throwing everything at Bastogne, and in fact offered the defenders of Bastogne the chance of surrender, to which the general in charge of the 101st Airborne Division, General McAuliffe, said famously, his reply, "Nuts, that's it, nuts." To what the Germans made out, who knows, but the Germans knew they were into a bitter fight. The Germans were having a hard time further north, so they had to dispatch the 2nd Panzer Division and the Panzer Lehr Division had to move on from Bastogne, leaving the 26th Volksgrenadier Division and the 901st Infantry Regiment and a few tanks to finish what they would think would be weak American forces and finish them off. And on Christmas Day 1944 started their assault. But the defenders fought tenaciously, destroying all the German tanks. And just as the Americans were weak and exhausted, the Germans were just as weak and exhausted. On the 26th of December 1944, the defenders of Bastogne got a late Christmas present, as Patton's 3rd Army, 4th Armoured Division smashed through the weak German lines, breaking into Bastogne. And in fact, if you go to Tiger Hobbies and look on our website and look for King Cobra or Jumbo Sherman, you'll actually find a model of that very tank that broke through those lines, the first tank into Bastogne. This was a M4 Jumbo Sherman. So a normal Sherman would do about 30 miles an hour, but the Jumbo Sherman only did about 20, but it was rammed full of armour. It was an assault tank. You put it right at the front of the assault column. And these tanks were proving very, very popular and wanted more and more of them for the American Army. On the 27th of December 1944, the skies finally became clear, and the superior air force of the Allies came into play, initially whacking the Germans at the back. And so the writing was on the wall for the Germans. And in part 7, we shall look at the British part in the Battle of the Bulge. Not massive, but significant. And also the death ride of the Luftwaffe as their part in the Battle of the Bulge, Operation Bodenplatte or Base Plate.